So I have 3 meditations that are pranayama meditations, but this meditation, breath, is not actually a pranayama meditation. It's actually more closely related to the mindfulness of breathing meditations that you find in a lot of Buddhism, and just as a very ubiquitous meditation that has become incredibly popular all over the world. This is probably the most taught meditation form in the world, which is simply just to sit and be aware of the breathing process going in and out of your body. Now, my particular version of it brings a couple of other things to the table that you don't usually see in mindfulness of breathing meditations. The first of those is obviously my structure, which my 8-part structure that includes some other components to it that help you to move into a meditative states more quickly and more fully than you do if you just are sitting there and just immediately start to observe your breathing. Additionally, I encourage you to not just randomly be aware of your breathing, but to focus a particular way on your breathing, which is focusing on the nostrils and the sensations in the nostrils, and visually be aware of the area that the breathing is taking place in. And like I've mentioned elsewhere, this is relatively easy to do. The main thing that you don't want to do is to make it a pretend situation. Instead, just make it an awareness. You're visually becoming aware of something that you aren't actually seeing physically. It sounds harder than it is to do. Everyone does it all the time. Just being, placing your visual consciousness on the process of what's happening, and then also kinesthetically feeling it. And then that leaves out the sound aspect. And there's 2 things that you can concentrate on sound wise in it. First of all, there is a little bit of sound that's produced even by the most gentle breathing. So you can just focus on, what is happening naturally. The other thing that a lot of people suggest to do, that I also think is a reasonably good exercise, is to count the breaths as they're happening, especially at first, because it helps to keep you focused, and it helps to help you notice if you're not being focused. Because what I would suggest doing is counting till 10, and when you reach 10, going back to 1. And most people will suggest when you're counting, if you notice that you're distracted during the count, that you go back to 1. I don't know if that's really all that fruitful of an activity to do. It seems more like a way of just making yourself feel bad. But if you'd like to, obviously, I don't tell you not to do that in the recording, so you can utilize it any way that you want. But counting to 10 is quite useful, because you become acclimated to that count after a little while, and sometimes you'll notice that you start to say 11, and at that point, that's when you know that you haven't been really attending to things as well as you could. And so it brings you back into a greater awareness of what's going on at that moment. But just generally, counting is a useful thing to do, and after you've counted for a few minutes, it might be useful to attempt to do it without counting for a little while, and you can always go back to counting again, just to keep you focused. And because counting in and of itself is not an activity that's going to lead you into deeper states of awareness of your consciousness, but it is a way of keeping you focused in the here and now. So just other than that, just make sure that you're focusing on all 3 parts of your awareness as much as possible at all times. And it's a meditation that actually can become fairly profound fairly quickly if you don't get lost in thoughts and instead stay with the experience. So it's a good one. It's interesting because the Buddhist meditation manuals that were the Visuddhimagga and the Vimuttimagga, they both talk about what kind of student should have each kind of meditation practice, of which there are 40 different meditation objects traditionally associated with Buddhism. And mindfulness of breathing is the one that they say is appropriate for everyone, particularly people who are delusional or dim-witted. So it's a meditation for everybody. So anyway, and apparently it's actually the meditation that is most associated with the Buddha's enlightenment. So there's that going for it as well. So talk to you later.